Hello everyone, welcome to the channel again. So here for today we have a special guest, Teenu Xavier. She is an assistant professor at the University of Mason. I forgot the name actually.
George
I
Mason
really have.
University?
Okay, yeah. And you're an assistant professor in nursing, right?
Yes.
Okay. We can start the session. So thank you so much for the interview and to be here and
Yeah.
here to motivate people and give you a suggestion and advice to the PhD aspirants and the researchers out there. Okay, so before we start, will you give us a little about you with a little self-introduction, please?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Teenu. I'm from Kottayam, Kerala, from a place called Vellur. It's kind of very close to Ernakulam and Kottayam. So I did my bachelor's in nursing and master's in nursing from AIMS, New Delhi. So I did the All India entrance exam, which is for the admission for nursing, and then that's how I got into AIMS Delhi. And I always wanted to be a researcher, like when I went to AIMS, because there are a lot of research happening, a lot of opportunities at AIMS. So when I saw people pursuing this research, even though I got into nursing, I always wanted to be a researcher. So that's how I ended up doing masters in nursing when I finished my bachelor's. So I applied for masters. It's again an entrance exam. I specialized in neurosciences nursing, and then we had to do dissertation for masters, and that was my like kind of hand-on like had an experience of research, and then I was kind of really interested in it, and then I always knew that maybe I should continue a career in this. But then once I finished my master's, I went ahead into practice because I did not have a lot of clinical experience as such because I did my master's soon after my bachelor's. So I did a little bit of acute care nursing at AIMS itself. And then we had a department called Nursing Informatics, which was kind of focused on introducing electronic health records at AIMS. So AIMS was the first public health hospital in India, which introduced electronic health records in India. So we had this patient report system. Everything was in EHR records. We started with billing, things like that went into the EHR. So they recruited a pool of young nurses who were more techie so that we could train nurses, doctors and technicians and help them adapt to the EHR record system. So I became a part of that team. We were around like 70 nurses, and then we had a research wing in that informatics section too. So I also was involved in that part. So I did few research, especially focused on, most of them were like kind of quality improvement projects as well as a little bit of research, not a lot of big research projects on how effective this EHR record was improving in the health system at AIMS. Then I moved to UK. I worked as a nurse there too. I worked in acute care for an year, and then I wanted to go back to research. So I moved to Cambridge University Hospitals. I joined the research team there. There, I worked in clinical trials. Basically, I worked in phase one, phase two, and phase three trials where we are testing drugs for especially rare diseases. So, I worked on a lot of clinical trials focused on rare diseases. That was kind of very much interesting for me. But most of these researchers were from either from pharma companies, big pharma companies like AstraZeneca. We had trials with GSK, for which we were mostly involved in implementing the projects rather than, it was not our primary research. So I enjoyed it for a little bit of time, but I wanted to do something more. And then I moved so I was thinking of doing a PhD. And by that time, I got married. My husband was in the US. So I was planning to move to US. I look for opportunities, and I know there are still a lot of people who know about PhD nursing. It is becoming more common in India these days because Indian Nursing Council has started PhD. People are doing PhD. There are other universities that are focused on PhD nursing. Even AIMS does that too. And even though there are a lot of nurses from Kerala and even from India in US and UK, I did not know a lot of people who did actually PhD nursing in the US. This was a bit of challenging for me to explore myself on, where to apply, what to do, how to go ahead with this because it was a completely different system. So that was kind of challenging for me. So I did apply to some of the universities in the US, and then I got into University of Cincinnati where I did my PhD. So once I got into the university, I kind of knew, what are the things happening in the US, especially in the nursing and the medical field. There were great mentors who kind of helped me to navigate my career from there. And then I did apply for a postdoc. I did a postdoc fellowship at University of Florida for like 2 years. And by that time, I knew where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do, kind of establish my area of research. And then I became a faculty at George Mason University. So I'm a tenure track faculty here, mostly focused on research majority of the time. I do research. I do teaching too. I teach nurse practitioner students as well as DNP students here. Yeah, that's me.
That's really great. So it is actually really rare to see people doing PhD in nursing. I never saw anyone, so this is my
Yeah.
first time I saw one person who already have a PhD in nursing. So I think this talk will be very helpful for many nursing students who want to pursue their career in research.
That is true. Like I get asked that question a lot, especially when I say that I'm a like when I, especially when I used to be a PhD student, I'm a PhD student in nursing. People used to ask me, okay, is there PhD nursing too?
Yeah.
And that is one reason I wanted to come in for this interview and talk to people that this is a career, not just clinical nursing. There are other opportunities for nurses who are really want to do more research, who are more kind of looking forward to changes in their career too. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you to you as well. So, can you tell if I know that it's been years you completed your PhD, will you be able to explain the process, how you got into that PhD position?
Sure. So that is one thing which I wanted to highlight here too. So I did a fully funded PhD. I got a graduate assistant scholarship. My tuition was fully funded, and I worked part time for like 20 hours. So I wanted people to know that there are opportunities like this too, where you don't have to worry about your tuition fees and you get a full scholarship. So I basically looked for universities and professors who had research interests similar to mine. So my interest was mostly focused on health promotion and informatics. So I look for, in universities who were kind of recruiting students who had interest in health promotion. So I worked mostly in resiliency and, promoting resiliency and strategies to promote resiliency in healthcare professionals, addressing the burnout and moral distress in the nursing population itself. That was my area of research when I started. So that's one thing I did wrong too. My area of interest was in informatics, but I didn't know a lot of what sort of research is happening in the US universities or what kind of students they want to admit. And I did not know because I did not had a nursing license or nursing. So in order to practice as a nurse, you need a registration. So when I started applying for PhD, I didn't have a registration in the US. So I kind of broadened my research area, started looking into less patient focused area because I did not have a nursing registration. And that's how I ended up, health promotion was one of my areas too. So I thought maybe I'll navigate that area. So I looked into various professors, their research interests, what they were working on, what were their previous publications, things like that. I kind of shortlisted 5 to 6 universities. Uh, and one other thing that was challenging for me was most of the universities required a nursing license. So I got rejected from some of the universities because I didn't have a nursing registration in the US at that time. So some of the universities, their PhD was in general PhD in nursing research, not in clinical practice. So they did not require a nursing registration in the US. They just wanted you to be a nurse who is licensed in the country from where you graduated. So that worked well with me because I was a licensed nurse already. So I kind of applied to University of Cincinnati. They had this excellent graduate support nursing assistant scholarship where they will fully fund your PhD. So I reached out to some of the professors there, just dropped them an email saying that, I gave my brief profile, what I'm interested in doing, asked them if I could schedule a meeting with them to see if I would be a good fit for them. And they were really gracious. Like, they responded to my emails, they gave me time slots to talk with them. I talked with them. So I think that is a great way of reaching out to professors here, because most of them are interested in hiring their PhD students. So if you just drop them an email, give them a brief intro, talk about what you're interested in doing, ask them, are there any opportunities? And some of them have opportunities to fully support them by funding, because most of the professors have funded projects here. So I talked with them, I did the application process. So the first step in my application process was to make sure I had the credential evaluation. So my nursing degree in India had to be evaluated with the US nursing degree. So I did a credential evaluation by CGFNS. That's the organization that does nursing credential evaluation. They also evaluate your nursing license degree and make sure that that is valid here too. So I did that. Then I had to write an statement of purpose essay, which is, I think, standard to all the PhD programs, talking about, what my previous experiences, what are my research areas, what I want to do, who is one professor or two professors I'm interested in working with, things like that. So I did that too. And when you write that, one thing I want to make sure, especially in the age of AI, make sure that it is personalized, because anybody can write a random essay talking about, all the things, but make sure that you connect it to your experience. That's one thing. I review PhD applications now, so that's one thing which we have been actually looking into now these days. So that's something you have to be really careful about. And then what else? I had to write an IELTS exam again, because they want, I think, an overall score of 6.5 with 7 in speaking. So I did that too, and I submitted the application in a common portal. So it's a portal called Nursing CAS, where the applications to all the institute goes into that common portal, and then you have to also apply to the individual university. So it's like $70 per application, and I think it's the same even now. So once you've submitted your application, they will kind of shortlist some candidates and invite you for interviews. So the interviews are the crucial stage where you actually have to have a research idea in your mind, what you want to do. That's what they talk about in these interviews. So they ask you about what you want to do, what you're interested in, what's your plan, why you want to do this, where do you see yourself in next 5 years or next 10 years, what's your long-term goal, things like that. And then they also talk about your working style, because you have to identify a mentor, make sure that you work well with them. So they talk about general things like that. So I had an interview, and then they offered me an admission, and I had to apply for a scholarship. So they kind of evaluate your GPAs in your bachelor's and master's degree, and then a little bit of experience too. If you have some experience in research, that kind of actually helps. So I got a full scholarship, and then I was working as a graduate research assistant as well as a teaching assistant. So I did 10 hours of teaching and 10 hours of research. That covered my kind of tuition fees, and then my expenses too. So basically, I did a PhD without, that, but no,
Yes.
I want to make sure uh, other nurses or aspiring nurses know that if you want to do a PhD, there are opportunities which is kind of fully funded, where you don't have to worry about your finances. uh, yeah, that's how I got into PhD.
Right. Okay. So, during your master's degree, you had some research related inputs, right? So,
Yes.
if anyone don't have that one when they do their master's in nursing, is it easy or is it too difficult to get into a PhD position?
So in the US, they have a pathway which is called BSN to PhD, where you don't require a master's degree too. So
Okay.
all the nursing students, like, it's standard in Indian nursing curriculum that when you do your bachelor's in nursing, you have to do a small research project even in your bachelor's. So that's kind of a group project. And if you are doing a master's, you have to do a dissertation that is kind of standard in the Indian nursing curriculum. So I'm pretty sure whoever does nursing from India and majority of the countries, like, I have friends from other countries like Philippines, I have friends from South Korea, people who have done PhD here. They also do dissertation in their masters. So I think if you're coming from an MSN to PhD pathway, you do have a little bit of experience of research. But if you're coming from a BSN to PhD pathway, you have to take some master's level or graduate level courses before you advance into the PhD level courses. So you do get some exposure of basic research and statistics sort of classes. But then that experience which you have in bachelor's, depending upon how you were involved in the project, it kind of helps too. But I would definitely say, especially in this time in the US, the student visa is being kind of very, they have limited the numbers. It's very strict. There are a lot of policy restrictions and things like that. So universities have an issue admitting international students. They're just worried about, how the visa interview and things like that are going to happen. So if you do have a research experience, that kind of strengthens your application and makes you stand out so that the universities wants to actually, like enroll you in the PhD program.
Right, right, right. Okay. So this question is to get a view from you. So when a PhD aspirant come to you for a PhD position, what do you expect from them?
So one
Yeah.
of the
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
please.
one of the things which really matters in most of the universities in the US, and I think most of the foreign countries, is that the research you are interested in doing should align with what the professor is doing. So almost majority of the professors who admit a PhD student are in tenure track position in the US. That means they are supposed to do research and they're supposed to get funded. So they apply for continuous funding. Either it can be from NIH or any of the other organizations, or it can be any foundational funds, or there are various opportunities for research funding, especially in the US. So most of them are funded. So they want to hire someone as a PhD student whose research kind of closely aligns with them. They also want to gain something from mentoring you. They don't want to go and do something which they are not focused on, because one thing that I have really noticed that is different from India is that in India, when you do research, say I am specialized in masters in neuronursing, I can do research in cardiac nursing. It doesn't matter. I sometimes collaborate with people who does research in administration or management. There isn't a focused area of research that is being developed. That's not how things work in other countries. So if a researcher does or a professor does a research just in stroke patients or patients with hypertension, they just do research in hypertension. That's it. They do not do research in stroke, or they do not do research in, uh, say, congenital anomalies of cardiac or other cardiac diseases. They're just focused on hypertension, or they're just focused on stroke. So make sure, if you have a research interest in ICU nursing, find someone who does research in ICU nursing. That's what they're looking for. So it doesn't exactly have to match the area. So for example, right now, my research is focused on informatics. So I would be definitely interested in hiring someone who does research in informatics. Like I do text analysis of EHR data. That's what I do. So I look into the EHR health records of patients and do natural language processing and large language model analysis to look into the text-based data to see how the communication affects patient outcomes. That's what I do. So I don't want to recruit a nursing student or any PhD aspirant who is interested in doing research in chronic disease conditions. So that's something you have to ideally look for, your research interest aligns with. And the second thing is that you should have some sort of exposure in research. So make sure that, at least you have co-authored a paper so that they know that, okay, they will go back and read your paper to make sure you are a good researcher. So try to work in, at least collaborate with someone who does research, and then get at least one publication out. Or it just doesn't have to be a first authored paper, maybe any co-authored paper works too. And then in nursing, at least, we look for if they have a clinical experience too, because that matters, because research intern actually goes into, we try to implement it in practice too. So if you don't have an experience working in the clinical field, it doesn't make much sense to do research as such, right? So we do also look into that too.
Yeah, right.
And
Are
of
you
course,
taking?
yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
And of course, GPA matters too, but that's something which is evaluated by General Admissions Committee rather than professors in general.
That is for the scholarship, is it?
A scholarship as well as an admission criteria, most of the universities require a GPA, I think greater than 3.4, something like that.
Out of four, is it?
Out of four, yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. Are you taking any PhD students?
So I just started. So in our university, I can
Yeah.
only kind of co-chair.
Hmm.
not like chair a student, because the first year is kind of mentored for us to. So even when you start with tenure track, the first 3 years is like you have protected time to focus exclusively on your research.
Right,
So as of now, I'm not, but I would definitely encourage applying. I can co-chair, but I cannot mentor someone individually.
right. So yeah, so I already asked what you expect from a PhD aspirant. So this question also related to that. If someone is writing you a mail, what are the things they have to include in that mail as a cover letter?
Sure. So I would really expect something to keep it very short, uh, because I do get a lot of emails, people randomly asking about, I want to work as a GA under you, things like that. So I actually skim the mail just to make sure, does it make sense to me or not? And then not all the professors read all the mail, and even I does that too sometimes. So I would definitely, maybe briefly introduce yourself, where you're from, what do you want to do, like what is your research area. That's one thing I want to see in the initial sentence, or maybe keep it bold or highlighted, something like that. So the moment you say that your interest is in EHR data or informatics, that catches my attention. So I will definitely look at that email. So I think that's pretty common with all of the professors. I had talked with some of them from the computer science department, and someone mentioned that he does exclusive research in LLMs, and he said he get a lot of emails from Indian students saying that they're interested in doing PhD and things like that. And he screens his email through some sort of system. I don't know what he uses, but
Yeah.
then if that word LLM is not mentioned, he just archives it. He doesn't even read it. So, if you don't highlight things to make sure that you catch other people's attention, it might get discarded. So maybe mention about the research area in the first initial sentences. Talk to the point. Don't talk about your background, where you did your bachelor's or master's, or things you did. That doesn't matter. Talk to the point, that what you require, your research, and then attach your CV, because if they are interested, they will definitely look into the CV. And then maybe also talk about briefly about what is the research you are interested in doing. Like, I mean, like the exact problem, what you're thinking about doing, because your problem might always change as you do your studies, and or as you all through your PhD program. But an idea of what research you want to do. And then, yeah, that's something in the cover letter too. You can address that in the cover letter too. Or in the CV, of course, you will have all the experience and things like that mentioned in the CV. So that doesn't make much sense to include those things in the main body of the email.
True. Yeah, once we are confident with the cover letter, we will go to the CV and check
Yeah.
everything is right to our research and things. Yeah, and the next one I need to know is, so your research is aligned with artificial intelligence and machine learning and things, right? If someone don't have any experience in medical field or in nursing field, or they are coming just from the computer science field, artificial intelligence and machine learning field, can they do a PhD in your research area?
One thing which most of the nursing schools have made changes, that they do not require you to be a registered nurse to get a PhD in nursing research. Having said that, when they screen your profile, they look for some sort of experience in nursing. So, for example, what I say is, like, when I did my PhD, I had a friend in my cohort who was a librarian, who did a bachelor's in literature, master's in literature, then became a librarian. Over the years, she worked with the university libraries. She was exclusively focused on health research, library, things like that. And then she worked with the College of Nursing, helping the College of Nursing professors to navigate the library, things like systematic reviews, meta-analysis, things like that. And she wanted to get a PhD in nursing research, particularly focused on the review papers. So she got admitted into our cohort because her area was aligning with, nursing research. Even though she was doing meta-analysis and systematic reviews, she was doing it for the nursing research. So she got admitted. I also know people who are economists who get admitted to PhD nursing research, because finally, when once they get their PhD, they work in either in health systems, health administration. They even go and become like work in information fields too, but focused on nursing. So there should be some sort of experience connecting to the nursing field. So say if you are someone in machine learning or computer science, I don't think until unless you have a research interest focus particularly on healthcare, you won't be admitted. But if you have a research interest focused on healthcare, you could be, but there are other opportunities like PhD in health informatics that would be much more aligned in your research area. But one of the major things in what I do is I do have a lot of collaborators I work with. So I am a nurse by training. I don't do a lot of coding. The coding which I do is I self-taught myself. So I don't have official training as such, or rest of the things are like I learned by myself. So I still have computer scientists, I have health informatics specialists in my team, I have system engineers in my team who are part of my research. I have biostatisticians in my team. So our research is mostly a collaborative approach. So even if you're a computer science graduate doing some PhD in computer science, and you want to be involved in health research, we can definitely collaborate. I do have some PhD computer science students who are working on some LLM projects, particularly focused in healthcare. So I work with them. It's a collaborative effort, like interdisciplinary collaboration.
Right, right. Okay. Yeah, I got yeah, idea about that.
Yeah.
And is there anything I'm missing to ask you?
Uh, what else? One thing is like once you get into the PhD, if you're a nurse, if you have a registration in another country, once you're in the PhD program, you might also want to think about getting an RN license. That helps you to work in the universities, because some of the universities might require you to have an RN license. So you have to have that thing in your back of the mind so that you work towards writing the CJ NCLEX exam, doing the CGFNS process, and get a RN registration in the US too. Yeah, that is something which you have to think about when you start applying.
Right, right, right. And
And then
yeah.
other question is, I think, the visa situation. So
Mhm.
what I did is like, so if you have a green card, or if you're getting married to someone with a green card, uh, it should be sorted out. But if not, you come in an F1 visa, do your studies, and then once you find your job, you can always switch to H1B. And then, there are issues related to H1B going on these days in the US, but still there are opportunities for applying for green card. There are other categories like EB1A, which is kind of an extraordinary skill for which most of the PhD applicants or the PhD graduates qualify for. So that gives you some sort of stability too.
Right, right. And at last, maybe I should ask you that what are the things a PhD aspirant should improve when they want to work in your research field?
Maybe do a course in health informatics or nursing informatics that might help you get, understanding about the system, how things work, what all. So, say if I go and talk about natural language processing, or large language model analysis using AI and text-based analysis of EHR data, it may not make sense for every nurses, right? So if you want some do something in informatics, I would definitely recommend doing some sort of self training, or at least there are various courses available which you can register for and do a pre-workup so that you are better prepared to do research. And then obviously, when you come into the nursing program, PhD, unlike other PhD programs, one thing we have is we actually teach them quantitative research in depth, how to do research. And we have almost 3 to 4 courses in biostatistics, which is mandatory for all the students to take. So they teach from the basic statistics to the advanced statistics. So even if you don't have a in-depth knowledge of statistics, it shouldn't be a great deal, because you will go through all this coursework to have that experience. But uh, they expect you to have a basic knowledge of biostatistics once you're admitted into the PhD program. So that's something which you can work on too, because that makes your life easier.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have to do everything to make it easier, right?
Yeah, yeah, because there is a lot of difference in how, and you might have noticed that too, how the academic system works in India as compared to other countries, right?
Yes.
Like the way the assignments are designed, the way the course is structured for your progress is kind of different from what we do back home. Um, and there is a lot of academic integrity too. So, for me, honestly, I kind of struggled initially. Like, I did not know how to navigate the system, especially because I did not have someone to ask for advice or something like that. So, for the first year, it was very challenging for me too. And once you navigate the system, you gradually learn things, how the courses are structured, how the assignments are structured, how the projects are structured. So that first year is challenging, but you get through it.
Right. Okay. Are you advising PhD aspirants if someone asks me any help, should I give you your LinkedIn ID or something? Maybe?
Yeah, sure, definitely. So, as I said, because I'm an early, so it's
Yeah.
basically my second semester as a tenure track assistant professor. I'm a very early career investigator, so we do have protected time. So we might take students maybe possibly next year, but of course, that's a timeline. If you so that you have to also look at the timeline. So, if you want to get admitted for 2027 fall, you have to start applying in 2026 fall. So the admission process starts an year before. So, be prepared. So you can obviously give my LinkedIn ID. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's great. At last, do you have something to share other than this one? Maybe something on your mind? If I'm missing something to ask, or if we
Uh,
missed something to share?
I don't think so. Like, we covered visas, we covered scholarships. Yeah, I think that's the main concern. I do get some questions from, my juniors or people like nurses I know, like about how to pursue. They are more worried about the finances, visa situations, things like that.
Yes.
I think that's the major concern. We covered that section, so that should be
Okay.
fine.
Okay. That's great then. So thank you. Thank you so much, Dr.
Sure.
Teenu Xavier, for sharing your
No, it's fine.
experience with us. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.